News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. Markets are starting to moderate a bit after state-run media reported Iran is drafting a protocol with Oman for traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, that report says the protocol won't constitute restrictions. Iran's deputy foreign minister says Tehran will set tolls for ships passing through the strait. Oil surged after President Trump, during his address to the nation last night, vowed an escalation in the war in Iran over the coming weeks.
We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong.
Bloomberg Intelligence senior commodity strategist Mike McGlone.
Just imagine if we get above 120 in those front contracts. We're already seeing a global tilt towards wealth destruction. You mentioned it in the stock market. We've lost almost, in terms of stock market cap, almost 20% of GDP already in terms of stock market cap. And if crude oil keeps going up, it's its own worst enemy. It takes everything down, and then it'll eventually go down.
Bloomberg's Mike McGlone. WTI now up more than 11% at $111 per barrel. Brent crude is up nearly 7% at about $108 per barrel. And we do check the markets for you all day long here at Bloomberg. The S&P 500 down 0.1%, NASDAQ down 0.1%, the Dow down 0.2%, the 10-year Treasury yield at 4.3%, and the 2-year yield at 3.79%. Bitcoin is 2% lower, around $67,000. Shares of top asset managers slid after Blue Owl Capital said it will limit redemptions from 2 of its private credit funds after facing a surge in withdrawal requests. Oaktree Capital Management CEO Armin Panosian tells Bloomberg TV this is not a private credit problem, it's a vintage problem.
I think with private credit in particular, we are seeing a difference in vintage in terms of performance. We are seeing weakness in the software sector. We're seeing some concerns around marks. And we're seeing concerns around the liquidity that's been promised against an asset class that is, by its nature, illiquid.
Blue Owl stock is down more than 1% after hitting a record low earlier in the day. Apollo Global Management fell by more than 2%. Apollo's Jim Zelter says the current economic backdrop is strong despite some concerns around inflation and stagflation.
We've really lost the plot on credit. We're talking, the headlines and the conversations are about this little narrow area of direct lending, $200 billion of the non-traded BDCs. And the reality is the last 15 years, credit has compounded great returns for investors around the globe. And so we're talking about a little bit of skirmish on the sidelines here.
Zelter spoke exclusively on Bloomberg Surveillance. Applications for unemployment fell last week as layoffs remain sparse despite a softening labor market and rising energy costs caused by the war in Iran. Bloomberg's Michael McKee.
Just 202,000 last week. That is down from 211,000 the week before. In terms of continuing claims, we see 1,841,000. That's up from 1,816,000 the week before.
Bloomberg's Mike McKee says the low hire, low fire economy continues. Dallas Fed President Lori Logan says current conditions make it harder to forecast the path of the U.S. economy.
Given the uncertainty we have in the various scenarios that could play out, I found it difficult to have a most likely path for the economy because there's just so much we don't know. Right now, I think policy is positioned to adjust to the data as it's coming in, and we're prepared to make adjustments to the policy path as appropriate.
Logan says the war in Iran is raising risks of both higher inflation and weakness in the labor market. Tesla posted one of its worst sales quarters in years, missing Wall Street expectations as the car maker struggles to turn around its core business and navigate an increasingly challenged electric vehicle market. Bloomberg Detroit Bureau Chief David Welch says the company did manage to top last year's sales, but there's been a steady decline over a number of years.
It's going to be a tough road ahead, I think, for Tesla to really turn investor sentiment around because they're not selling vehicles like they used to. And there are a lot of big question marks on the new strategy and the big pivot that Elon Musk is making with this company.
Bloomberg's David Welch on Bloomberg Intelligence. Shares of Tesla are more than 4% lower. NASA's crew of astronauts on the Artemis mission are on the first day of a 10-day journey to slingshot them around the moon. But a lot has to happen first today. Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow is following from the Kennedy Space Center.
They conducted a burn this morning that took them from low Earth orbit to higher Earth orbit. The mission directors and flight directors have to decide if they are a go for the burn which propels Orion the 250,000 miles or so to the far side or dark side of the moon. That's what we're tracking toward.
The mission is a crucial in-space dress rehearsal, marking the biggest milestone yet in NASA's multi-year Artemis campaign to land humans on the moon as early as 2028. President Trump is reportedly weighing whether to fire Attorney General Pam Bondi. Sources tell the New York Times the president has not made a final decision, but has floated the idea of replacing Bondi with EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin. Semaphore reports Trump has already told Bondi that her time as Attorney General is coming to an end. That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris, and this is Bloomberg.